Hello everyone and welcome to using ArcGIS Hub and Dashboards to examine COVID-19 trends. My name is Chris Hill. I work for Meshach and Associates, and what I wanted to talk about today was just kind of this dashboard that I put together for the state of Washington and go through a little bit of the process about how I built it and put it together, and hopefully provide some insight to everyone as far as if they're interested in doing dashboards, how can I do it, what all goes into it, and show some examples of what that looks like. So for the kind of the outline, I'd like to just talk about the project concept and what I really envisioned when I started to put this dashboard together, and just really what I was hoping for and looking, and then kind of how that process evolved into what I'm updating and maintaining today. The data development, how I basically take the data that was provided via the State Department's website and turn that into something that I could map intelligently, and also put in some different charts and graphics to keep up with how the things are changing. We'll talk a little bit about how the dashboard was formatted and how some of these charts and things are created and how the data plugs into that. And then creating the hub, we'll briefly look at how put things together in a hub to really put a place where I could put additional viewers or additional dashboards all in one location with a web address that's kind of friendly. And then I'll do a little demo showing how the data is updated. And I think that the important part of that is it shows how the data, how the data is structured, how it's updated, and then how it's published, and gives you a little bit behind the scenes of like, okay, how would I really do this if I wanted to create a dashboard? What does updating that data look like? And that's what I hope to show you guys here. So just project concept, again, what I wanted to do is really just figure out a way to track this stuff appropriately. And I wasn't necessarily interested in the total counts. I really wanted to see how things were changing. And again, this is something I just kind of wanted to do on my own. It wasn't anything we were sponsored. Nobody was necessarily paying us or paying me to do this. I just wanted to really just chart it from my own understanding of how the virus is changing. I knew how to do dashboards and knew the data was available. So how do I make that thing work? And really just how do I show that change? The dashboards did a great job showing the numbers and kind of the general trends, but not really the trends. I say general trends, the numbers really weren't there. How much was it increasing in my county per day? And how is it changing in relation to other counties at the same time? So those are some of the things that I didn't feel like the data presented gave us a specific outline of that information. So that's really what the focus was. The other element that I wanted to do is use that hotspot mapping technique kind of with the firefly symbology. I really liked that symbology, and I thought it really made the map kind of pop. And so I was looking, okay, how can I make a map that's cool and is informative and something that can really help people get a better idea of what's happening with this virus. So data development, I basically copy and paste the data daily from the Washington State Department of Health. They publish the data, update about sometime in the late afternoon every day. And I was essentially going, and you can see the snapshot of the web page there. I basically go through, and this is the spreadsheet, the master spreadsheet that I use to publish data through ArcMap and then eventually to ArcPro and onto ArcGIS Online. So this spreadsheet is kind of the gospel for this particular part of the project. So you're looking at all the different cases counts and the different days, and then this table, so this is what's published and what you see on the dashboard, and then this other table here is the supplement part of that, where I've summarized the data that's in the master spreadsheet there into just kind of a chart. And the primary benefit to this was actually showing, getting the data organized by date. You can see there in the far left column of the little table, I've got the 10-2, 10-3, 10-4. That's going to be my x-axis in a lot of my charts. I was trying to use the graphs before to summarize the data in the big table, but I was having to manually update the dates. Whereas I do it this way, I don't have to update the dates, it updates them automatically. And again, the numbers here in this table just populate from summing the numbers in the other table. So it's pretty straightforward. It does it all kind of behind the scenes. I mean, I copy the data over, and we'll show an example of how that works, and then I publish it convert these to CSV, and then bring them up into ArcMap to publish to ArcGIS Online. So here's kind of the data that started the process, and here's the different counties. You can see the Seattle, Tacoma metro area there around Puget Sound has the most dense of the data. And then we've got Grant County and Kitsap County also had more data than just one single point per county. And so that's how I started doing this. It turned out to be quite a laborious process. Here's an example of what that data table looked like. And I was literally having to edit these things manually, key these data sets in. There really wasn't a good way to copy and paste and get the data from the county websites. And so I just had to literally come in and key these in manually. Plus I was doing tabular calculations on each of these fields. So if you expand this table to the right, you've got the case current and the deaths and the changes for each day for 7 days out. So I was calculating each of these fields, and it was just a very laborious process, and probably could have used some Python coding to make it better, make it more efficient, but it's just not something I eventually got. That's where I wound up going back to Excel, and really it's just much easier to copy and move all the data there, plus QA/QC it and make sure it lines up correctly. And so this is the current data set now that I'm using, where I've got data by county and I've got the numbers there, and it really shows a lot of the same information without some of the detail, but overall it gives you the patterns for the charts that I was kind of looking for. So here's kind of my first run at the dashboard. And again, the Firefly mapping really kind of shows the density, which is something I was hoping for. And notice too, the points not necessarily in the centroid of the polygon. I tried to move those points to where the communities were, actually where the cities, where the population density was, to kind of show this is where the areas where the virus is probably spreading. On the left of this, I've got the case counts, the total counts for cases, deaths, and hospitalizations. And on the right side, I've got the actual daily counts. And this is where I was really wanting to focus. So in this example, you can see there's 225 new cases on May 27th. And Pierce County had 90 of those. So that gives me an example of, okay, now I know that almost half the cases for that day came from the county I live in. So something to be aware of. And so this is kind of the data I was looking for. And you got the charts on the bottom that show the daily changes and then the total cumulative changes in the charts there. So again, all the data you're seeing here relies pretty much on those two tables that I just showed you, exporting them into CSV and then linking them up with point data, and then publishing them through ArcGIS Online to get what you're seeing on the dashboard. Even more further kind of behind the scenes is here's in this red box, I've highlighted the 4 things that really make this dashboard work. And the middle 2 items are the feature layer and the service definition. Those are what I publish out of ArcPro, and I publish several of those layers together as one service. So the points that you see on the map that are sized differently based on the case counts, and then the county boundaries and all those things, all those are grouped as one feature service that I publish them all together. You do have the option of publishing them individually. I just preferred sending them all as one group and working with it that way. And then basically you take that feature service, put it into a web map. So that 4th item that you see in the box, that's the web map where I kind of built the symbology and got everything looking the way I wanted to cartographically. I knew the dashboard was using the dark colored theme, so I knew that I wanted my map to kind of cartographically fit with that. So that's why I used the dark gray background and some of those other things that I did on the cartographic side, and then pushed it out to the dashboard. So that's kind of just that process in your mind. You publish the feature service online, you put it into a web map and symbolize it the way you want, and then you're able to push it out to a dashboard, and that's where you build your charts and all the other data sets that you see in the dashboards that I've shown. So here on these dashboards for these little charts, this is kind of an example of what those settings look like. And just to give you a feel for it, there's the 7-day case change total table is what this is pulling from. I've got the data sorted by county, and it's summarizing the current case change field and putting that into the chart that you're seeing there on the right. And then some of the other symbology parts, this shows you there's some really cool things to make the opacity different and the line thickness, so you can really make some graphs that kind of pop and look kind of neon. I'm an 80s kid, so anytime I see something that looks neon and stuff, it's really cool. It looks like neon to me, and that's I really like that symbology. So here on the other chart showing the daily case changes, I've got a couple of series shown here. I've got the case changes and the case change average shown as a line graph. So that really kind of gives you a feel for how the cases are changing and then how the overall pattern is increasing or decreasing. And so it's been pretty steady lately. It's rising slightly. This was about in the lower 400s a couple weeks ago, and now we're in the 500s. So things are, we are upticking just a little bit in the last few weeks. And then here's the final dashboard that's put together that I'm currently maintaining. So again, the same map that you've seen. There on the left, I've got those tables kind of condensed a little bit more efficiently than I did before, but showing the total case counts and then by the different areas that are affected. The graph in purple is the graph that shows the 7-day total. So that means on this date, it was published on the 9th. So basically I took the number of cases on the 9th and subtracted from the number of cases on the 2nd to see how many cases we have accrued over a 7-day period. And so here you can see the numbers are pretty consistent, but you can see there's a slight uptick as we get to the last towards this last weekend. And then you can see that reflected in the data too below in the blue chart with the yellow line highlighting how the cases have kind of descended down towards the weekend and then uptick towards the week. And we're seeing those numbers there. And then we've got hospitalization numbers on the middle graph and then the total cumulative cases statewide on the bottom. The graphs on the right are the ones that show these individual counties that were kind of identified as hotspots early on, and it's got King, Snohomish, and Pierce, which are kind of the big 3 counties, as I call them. They're ones that are the most populated, and then we've got Yakima, Benton, and Franklin counties shown as well. They were hotspots early on, and they're not quite as hot now, which is a good thing, but they were definitely a source of cases early on that were really kind of out of control. Spokane County was quiet earlier, and now they've had quite a few cases lately, but they're leveling out as well. So we're just looking at these 7-day trends, and of course there's a lot of caveats that go into what we're looking at here, but just looking at the general trends, we're able to see some counties are increasing, some counties are decreasing, and over the year I've seen all of them trending towards green and yellow, and I've seen them all trending up towards red over the course of the years this virus has changed and expanded. So that's the overall dashboard. That's kind of what we've been focused on putting together. And then, so once this dashboard has been prepared, then we want to look at, I'll add one item here. We've got a pop-up. You can click on the different data sets and pull up that see the changes per any one of those individual points, which is really helpful. So once this data is here on the dashboard, we can push it out to a hub. And so the hub edits just kind of like a web page editor. It's pretty easy to use to go in and just customize. I mean, I brought in a nice high-res image and put in some text there to talk about my project, and then brought in a link that shows a little window here for my dashboard, and I can add other dashboards as I have on this hub. I can put graphics or charts or any other multimedia that I want, and it's all just really easy to insert it and work with it. It's pretty straightforward if you're used to using even something simple like PowerPoint. Once you kind of learn the layout of things, it's pretty straightforward. And here you can see I can add different dashboards, different elements, all the different things that I can add. You can see there in the add content window. And so here's the dashboard, kind of just what it looks like in the end. So it becomes a really nice place. The big part to get here is the simple web address. I don't know if you've seen any of the dashboard addresses, but their text is kind of long and the string is really kind of tough to tell someone. That almost looks like they're clicking on a bum link. So this is something that's a little bit more of an official link, which I really appreciate. And you've got some flexibility on what that link actually becomes. So it's a really good way to share your data. All right, so for this part, I'm going to go through the actual data maintenance part and what we do or what I'm doing daily to update the data. And this will kind of show you how this process works. So in here, you can see I'm opening this up. This is the website. I'm looking at the text that's there and highlighting these elements, and I'm going to basically paste these into Excel. So this is what I started doing back in February and March when this data was put together. And the first step is really to paste it in here. And what I'm going to do is put this and make an archive copy of this just to keep, so I have a reference of everything that's been collected, per day, per county. I've got that data inventoried here in my spreadsheet. So I'm just going to do a quick copy and paste and drop this over here. So it's pasted. Excel gives me that weird error that it likes to do, and then I'm just going to format that. So now I can go back to my main chart and in the main part of the spreadsheet and make these changes. So here I'm going to update the 7-day total first. So the graph that was in the purple, these items are published here at the end of this chart. So basically I copy all these and move them over one column, so they basically get pushed down one day. The reason these are at the end of the table instead of the beginning by the other 7-day total is just because the way I built the data, and anytime you add fields, it's always good just to add on to the end and not try to move fields around. That can cause a problem when stuff is published. So here I just copy those over, and then when I paste in the new values, those data values for the 7-day count will update accordingly. So here I'm just selecting all the data that I'm going to update. I'm going to move these over one column. Just again, this is something I was doing manually in ArcMap before I knew there had to be a better way. I just had to figure it out, and without getting into Python, this was an easier way to do so. So now I'm going to copy these values out of the spreadsheet here and move them into the master spreadsheet, and it's going to give me my case counts for the day. So I'm going to publish those here. So we've got 642 new cases. I'm not sure if you guys can see those numbers or not, but I'm going to update these dates in this column to the current date and fill in that data real quick. Again, there's probably some scripting or something that would make this probably a little bit more efficient. I've tried to slow it down for my process here, but it's usually a pretty quick process. So there I've got the case counts per new cases per day. Then I've also got the average totaled right there. So that's kind of the point of that data. And then here's that data table again, where everything just kind of automatically populates because of the way things are summarized for the other spreadsheets. So once that's all together and organized, I'm pretty much set. This is pretty much ready to save out as a CSV. So I'm going to go do a quick save both of these elements out as CSV files. It'll take a quick second to get these copied out. And again, I did a little bit of either just using plain Excel or using CSV. I just had a little bit more luck with stuff being more consistent in the CSV format. It was just a little more predictable sometimes when it came in. Again, you can do it either way. I just preferred, I had more problems with locks and things like that more than anything. So here, these are both now saved as CSV files. One for the chart and then one for the point data. So this is the chart data I'm saving here. I'm going to go ahead and cancel that, close that out. And now close all these. I'm going to open up ArcMap and export this data out. And again, the reason this is in ArcMap is because when I first started doing it, it was easy I had to calculate all these fields manually, and it's much easier to use the field calculator in ArcMap. So you can see the join highlighted there. And so since this join is already set up and I overwrote the Excel file or overwrote the CSV file, and now it's looking at the new CSV file and all the data is already joined. So I just have to go in here and do a quick export to kind of have my archived version of it, and you can see all the different data sets that are collected there. I just add this to the end with the new date, save it, and I'm going to save the chart as well. Should go through here, and again, the idea is to export these out and bring them into ArcPro. And again, I could do this in ArcPro just as easily. I think it's more of a pattern of how I had this stuff established, and everything joins right. And you all know how it is. If we're all in this transition to ArcPro, so sometimes it's just easier to do things here. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to open up ArcPro, and that's where we're going to publish this data to the dashboard. So ArcPro is going to come up. I'm going to pull up the Washington data. And again, this is where I basically set all the symbology and everything for what you see online. And I'm going to repath these to the data sets that I just exported. Again, one thing to note here is I created this symbology, kind of how I wanted the map to look here, and then I published it online through ArcGIS. Everything transferred great, but then when I tried to make changes here in the symbology and then publish those changes, the changes didn't really stick for some reason. So I wound up having to make most of the symbology updates and changes on the ArcGIS Online side, even though I'm republishing these services. So I'm going to link this to the current data and save that in there. And now I'm going to go to share. I'm going to save it. Then I'm going to go to share and web layer. And then I'm going to overwrite the existing web layer that's out there. And so it'll come up, and I'm just going to browse to Washington and Washington State phasing, and then publish that. So it's going to come up and give me a warning, and I'm going to go ahead and hit OK here. So it takes it, once I hit OK, it takes about 30 seconds to a minute to publish. It's not the fastest, but it's not terribly slow either. So while that's publishing, I think we're going to hop over and look at how the data's how it looks on the ArcGIS Online side. So right now we're in the process of updating the feature layer and the service definition. Just all this data is under content, under my content, and then these are all the different services that I have that I've kind of, you can see some of them are pretty dated. I haven't updated several of them in a while, but this is the one that I'm updating currently now. Just checking it, looks like it's still publishing. So clicking on the dashboard here, I'm going to show just some of the metadata that's important to put that in there as far as describing what it is, and keeping that information current is important. And then showing the actual map, the web map that's behind the scenes. This again is where I mentioned where I'm setting up a lot of the symbology and such as these things are published. This is where I will make those changes. And really I had to make changes when the case count started getting higher and higher. I had to come in here and change the range of how these dots color, how they sized based on those ranges, so that it was somewhat relative. But again, any of those changes are done here. You can see these are the same layers I had in my ArcPro window. They're all published under one web map and one feature service here. So that's where when I update the data, this is that web map is what is getting updated with the information there. So now my feature layer has been published. I'm going to hop into the dashboard, and we're going to go ahead and make these edits. So the good thing about publishing this data this way is now when I open this up, all my widgets, all my charts and data are all current. They've all been updated with the current data set that I just published. So really what I have to do now is come in and change these dates to the current date. So I have the current information in there. Again, this is pretty easy to do once the data is published. Now before, you can see all the graphs there along the bottom. I had to go key in those dates manually, but now that I made that other table that had the dates as one of the column values, then I was able to come in and it just updates them automatically. So everything except for these items is updated with the current information. And then I also come in here on these charts on the far right, and I'll sometimes change the color based on the way the cases are changing. So, right now, if they're oranges and reds, tend to be through increasing rapidly. King County data there is stabilizing. Snohomish and Pierce are still increasing slightly. Some of those are decreasing, and then I'm going to change this one. It looks like it's stabilizing as well. So just go in as kind of a little bit of an error check and set those colors to make them seem more appropriate for how the cases are changing and give you a more quick visual reference as far as what's happening. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save that, and that is how the dashboard is updated. And that's kind of the process I go through, and hopefully that illustrated some of the data sets and things that go into this process. So With that, we'll kind of come to the end here. Again, this is the overall dashboard. Again, organizing the data early on to match what's going to go into the widgets is important. There's plenty of tools that are out there and make that a lot of simple data look really fantastic with these charts. And again, it's a little bit easier than it appears based on what we see here. And the strength of any dashboard is, of course, the data behind the scenes. And there's caveats with the case counts and things like that because they're all related to testing. But overall, I think you get a general feel for how things are changing, and that's really what I was hoping for here. So with that, there's the link to the dashboard there at the bottom of the page. If you need to get in touch with me after the conference or whatever, and I'd be happy to give you more information if you need it, if you have trouble getting access to that. And really, that's about it. I'll try to leave a little bit of time for questions. Thank you all very much.